Do, 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 do. I think I'm ready to go. Morning, Abigail. Abigail, do you go by Abigail or Abby? Years ago, student girls wouldn't go by Abigail, they'd call it Abby. Abigail was seen as being old fashioned, but today I noticed there are a lot of them. Um, a lot going. It's, I'd say some names go out of fashion and some come back into fashion again. That's one that's had its cycles for sure. Uh, anyway, morning page. So we'll just give another minute for people to tune in. Hi, Sophie. Sorry, Sophie. I always think of the name. I got Dora's picture there, the dog I had before Dora, and was joined to me at the hip almost for 11 or 12 years, something like that, till she passed away. Her name was Sophie. So, um, the no, I don't think of you as a dog, but I think of the name fondly. Yeah. Anyway, all right, I'm going to start. Um, I've introduced my friends here, of course, Dora, Sam, and Bruce. That uh, those pictures are old ones. If you could see in the backdrop, there was greenery outdoors. The plants were all there, flowers were in bloom. It's all brown in my backyard at the moment. But I do want to go through a bunch of last final announcements that this is going to be our last class. I'm not going to have one next week. Monday is a holiday, so there wouldn't be a class. And Wednesday, I'm going to cancel it because your last assignment's due Friday. Your last quiz is on Saturday. So the last 10% of the course is this week. Um, so why would you come back unless you want to see my face again? I think you've probably got better things to do. You got other courses, you've got exams coming up, that I'm not going to take up your time or attention uh, beyond today, unless you got questions, and I'm always here for follow up. So those are due this week. The discussions, there hasn't been one for week 12. I didn't post one. And the other ones are still open, but I'll be closing them up at the end of the day today. Okay. Uh, check your grades. Make sure nothing is missing that you submitted. That I did have an email last night from a student that is asking what's the status of assignment number 4 with him. And I'm sure he did send it to me. He had to email it to me for, can't remember what the reason was. I thought I'd marked it, but he says a grade isn't posted. So I've got to go and look into that. Please do that this week, and I'll try to resolve everything I can by the end of this week. Okay. Um, that once final grades are submitted, and I'll be doing that sometime next week, it's a real arduous process for me to go back and fix things. I have to go through the dean's office and others to approve a grade change. So if they're missing items, the sooner we get them resolved, the better. That I expect a lot of you are going to do really well in the course. I hope that's not that the course is too easy. I hope that it's because you actually understood what was going on. And if in this course or other courses you feel you've got a reasonably good handle on the material, maybe it's something you're interested in and you'll later want to go on and major in. A lot of you will major in accounting or finance, for example. And so after you've done your accounting course, if you did well in it, apply to become a marker or a teaching assistant, a tutor in the course. You'll learn even more um, about those basics. You'll get your basics hammered down really, really well by taking on that type of role because you'll get questions from other people who are trying to figure out why did they do this? And it leads to deeper understanding. And so there are benefits, particularly if it's in your major subject, to becoming a teaching assistant of some sort. To do that, you have to generally apply to BCom office, the advising office, I think they're the ones that are coordinating it all these days. It used to be you went through the departments or through the profs, but I think they've centralized it now. But consider that. There are other reasons it pays. The pay isn't too bad either. It's better than minimum wage. I think you can earn up to about $1,000 a term, and the hours aren't too bad. But probably the thing you'll use the most is references. When you come around to graduate, or you're looking for part-time jobs or whatever, frequently you're asked for references. And even in a face-to-face world, a lot of students really don't get to know their profs. But if you work for them, you do get to know them somewhat better anyway. And you can use them as references. For scholarships, that comes up as well. And generally for the students that have worked for me in the past, I very frequently end up having to write reference letters for them. For co-op work placements, you name it, that it comes up. Uh, so think ahead. Build up your pool of people you can ask for references as you go. One of these days you'll need them. Uh, Other thing I advise you to do, apply for scholarships. I've said it before. There are about 250 available that maybe only 500 or 600 people apply for. Those are pretty good odds. Uh, if you Google on the St. Mary's website for financial aid, you will see how to apply. And for almost all of them, there's only one application form. You just fill that out, and that's all you need. The survey we've been doing in the class on what worked and didn't work this term, it's still open. So if you haven't participated, I would welcome your feedback. Learned a lot from you. It's given me, and I'll be sharing it with others, some insights about planning for next year. And this year, things have changed rapidly. That over the course of last summer, there were a number of national surveys of high school graduates about their feelings about online courses. And are they going to take courses online, or are they going to take a gap year, that type of thing? And student views changed radically from May, June to August. There's more buy-in for online. Uh, and then the survey I did of students last fall, that there was some acceptance among them when looking back at what worked and didn't work in the course, that online wasn't as bad as some of them feared. Um, and they could see some benefits in it. In the survey we did of you in January, among when asked what was the best thing about the fall, some of you said online courses, which was a shocker. We didn't expect that. A lot of you said the worst thing about the fall was online courses. And part of that was the social isolation. Part of it was the quality of the course. That the feedback you're giving me now is that you can see some merit in online courses, at least in some subjects. So when I asked you taking a course like this one, um, that how would you advise me about delivering it face to face? Most of you were saying, keep most the same, do a few things in the classroom, but uh, by and large, you seem satisfied with it being online. And some of them actually said, well, if I had to do a course like this again, I'd probably do it online and not do it face to face. And I'd even do it asynchronously and not live. Uh, there was a large proportion of students who said that. So you've changed in that regard in terms of buy-in to online, but you've also made it very clear that regardless how we teach in the future, or if it's face-to-face, online, synchronous, asynchronous, recorded lectures should be mandatory. Every lecture should be recorded, which is so your expectations have changed dramatically. So this survey has been very useful in giving new insights about you as clients and how to serve you and do that type of thing. And uh, I'm concerned St. Mary's will start work on a new building very soon, I think this summer. It'll be an extension off of the Sobe building. Most of it is for research, office space, other type of things. There's a little bit of classroom space, but have they designed the classroom space for a post-COVID world? I think classrooms in the future are going to be radically different. We need the technology to pick up audio. How do we do discussions, case study analysis in both an online and face-to-face environment? Or how do you do a recording of a face-to-face class that will, for those students that have done the course online or could not, they couldn't participate in that class face-to-face? You'll need to configure rooms quite differently and the technology. And what if we had to keep up social distancing into the future? How do you work in small groups? Would we design spaces for small groups differently? I really don't know. If you were to build a restaurant today, wouldn't you build it differently than previously? Same way here. Um, and we haven't thought through those. So um, I'm going to post in the next day or two the results of your survey, that the spreadsheet of all the responses. I just have to go through and edit to make sure there are no identifying features of students or of instructors in there, so that it's not, there's no personal information. But once I've got that clean and I think it's safe to post, I'll put it so you can see what other people had to say. But if you haven't responded and you do have other thoughts, I would actively encourage you to participate or send me feedback. Um, that uh, Unfortunately, your feedback is for a quantitative type of course, and most of your feedback may be applicable to an accounting course or a finance course. Probably doesn't work well with a marketing course. The 8:30 class, we had a couple of students that are doing marketing now, and they said, it's a completely different world. And so, anyway, what we've got to do today very quickly is get through deployment, but you've got an assignment due. So I've got to skip this and go and look at the assignment. And I'm going to spend 20 minutes or so on your assignment. Hopefully that's enough to cover questions. So I've had a number emailed to me. I know I've still got some that have come into my mailbox in the last hour. Um, and I think they're probably about the assignment. So let me try going through a couple pieces. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but hopefully will help you out in some, uh, it fits with some of the questions that are being posed. The first question, first six, seven questions or whatever, have to do with a tree. And the key thing here is to build the tree. If you can't build the tree, it's really hard to do the rest of the question. So let's talk about how you build a tree. A tree is sequential. It starts at a root. You've got a trunk that goes up, or a branch that goes up, and then a branch that goes off the branch, and a branch that goes off the branch. You can't talk about the ending branches without talking about where they came from. Okay, so you start at the beginning. Start at, like a tree, as how does it grow? Okay, how does it start out? So it starts out, since each of the branches depend upon how you got there, you have to begin with where you don't need to know where it came from. Where's the seed, in a sense, to this? And that's in the very first statement. This one here talks about missed credit card loan payments occur 6% of the time. Doesn't give me anything else. All by itself, standalone. That's where I start my tree. So here's how I'll do it. I'll try to draw it here, which is tedious in Word. You can freehand it and take a picture, but I'm going to have to draw these things. And so be patient with me here. So I'll show you how, if you want to do drawing, and there are more efficient ways than I do it, but I have learned some tricks, but I'm still clumsy in doing this. So I'm going to do a lot of lines. So I tend to just my line and recycle it. Okay? So I don't have to go and do as many clicks. So here's where I'm going to start out. And I've got a put a little text box and describe this. So right at the start, what does this branch represent? This branch represents missed payments. So maybe on my picture, I'm just going to write M 6%. Okay? What does M mean? You should be, every time you're defining symbols or shorthand, defining it. So M equals missed payment. Keep a legend of these things, okay? So, and so I've got the other branch. So I just copy my box as well. I can move it down here. And this is the opposite. So if I miss a payment, the opposite is not missing it. Put a little tick mark in there. And if 6% went up, 94% must go down. I've got to go somewhere. It's got to add to 100%. Okay? We're going to add a whole bunch of probabilities and things. I'm going to do calculations as I go. You don't have to. In the tree, you don't have to do this. I'm going to do it because we're going to use that later. And I have trouble visualizing percentages, and I think most people do. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go and where am I back here under format? I'm going to put another text, a couple of text boxes in here. I'm going to put one, oops, in here. Okay, right at the start. Oops. And let me make my, hopefully you can still read these things if I make the numbers a little smaller. Allows me to make my boxes, oops, a little smaller. Suppose, to show the opposite, use the same, nope, I could have done on time. Okay, so, but you do need to have an opposite in there. So I can make up, but yes, you can do it any which way you want to do it. Let me just keep it same for now, if you don't mind. But symbols are your choice. It's what works for you. The prime actually is I find annoying. Um, it's hard to see. It's small, and I actually prefer using two different letters or symbols. Okay. Um, suppose I start out with 100,000 different cases that I've got. If 6% went up here, then I would get how many run down this road, travel along this branch? Well, it's 6,000 cases are up here. Okay. Um, that and so how many are down here? And I've got 94,000. I like this because I can sort of understand percentages, but I can see it a lot better if I can think of something concrete. And I've done this before when I introduce probability. I, I try to make it concrete. So let's imagine 100,000 cases, 6,000 are mispayments. Yeah, okay. You can, okay. I'll get to the 1,000 in just a second. That was poor language on my part in the question. That I didn't realize people would understand this way. But so I think of 100, I'll split it at 6 and 94. You could use 1,000 if you wanted, but you'll run into decimals, and I'm trying to avoid decimals if I can. After this bit, I'm going to branch, and it talks about having examined records of 1,000 customers or more, over 1,000 over the last 2 years. I shouldn't have said that. I should have just said that they analyzed over, many, many customers over the last 2 years. I shouldn't have put a number in here. And there are a couple of things that I've used with numbers that have turned out to be confusing to you. And in hindsight, I'll have to change that going forward. Okay. That so this is how we're going to branch next. So the 1,000 here was nothing magical. It's not important. Focus on the percentages and the probabilities for now. Among those that missed the payment, the balance owing was over $3,000 for 60% of them. So, you missed a payment. How much did you owe? Well, it made branch here. I'm going to make my branch smaller. So what happened here? So it could be that, hold on a sec. I'm going to have to set, be patient with me doing my drawing here. Okay. So of these people that missed a payment, what could happen? Well, they put in I could have this group up here. And this group up here, and let me make my font a little smaller, had a balance, okay, that was over $3,000. So I'm not actually, I could shorten this. I could put it as a label. I could have it, if you wanted it in symbols, you might have used something like B plus, mean balance over 3,000. And you would define that in your legend. I'm going to put in the words, if you don't mind. And this is 60% of these people fit that. Okay? And let me try to copy all this down here. Oops. Come on, there we go. But for people that didn't miss a payment, go up and read this. Among those balance over 3,000, among those that missed a payment, balancing owing was over 3,000 for 60%. Among those who made the payment on time, only 15% owed more than 3,000. So this one has a similar branch, but this is only 15%. Okay? That you could, when you're describing them, that was if the opposite, those that don't go in the top branch have to go in the lower one. So that's under 3,000. And if 60% went up the top, 40% go down the bottom. Okay? So this is how this group splits. How many of them are there? Well, oops, hold on. Grab the wrong thing. These guys over here. So it's not 6,000. How many have I got here? I have 6,000. 60% of them have a balance over $3,000. So that would be 3,600 cases. That would leave 2,400 cases that are under $3,000. Down here, what have I got? Ew, 15% of 94,000. Oh boy, what is that? I think I've got it here. So I didn't miss a payment. 94. Let me find a calculator. 94 times 0.15. Can I get this? 14,100. Okay, get back here. 14,100. And similarly, I can do the other one down there. And so I actually use my rule for probability. This is probability balance over 3,000 given M times the probability of M would give me the probability of mispayment and balance over 3,000. But we'll get to the issue of probabilities later. Okay? So from here, I'm going to branch again. And I will take this little guy. And so what's happening next? Well, I guess I should put a little line on it too. A little bit long. Running out of space here, but I'll survive. What's this top branch? So I go back and read my question again. Among those with a balance over 3,000 and who missed a payment and over 3,000. So it's these people, this group. Okay. What did they do now? 80% paid less than 20% of their balance owing. So say their balance owing was $5,000. They made a payment of less than $1,000. Okay, just some amount of money. If their balance owing was $10,000, then they made a payment of less than $2,000. I don't really care what the amount was. I know it's more than 3,000. I want to know, did they make a small payment or a big payment? So 80% made a small payment. So let me just get myself a box here. So here I'm going to say that last payment is small, is 80%. And oh, what did I do? I don't know. Let me do this again. Why is it doing that to me? Okay. It's not letting me do this. Let me just go then and create a new box. And so here, and let me get my font down and smaller. So here my last payment is large, and that would be 20% did that. Okay. And then I could look at, well, what then happens? Okay. Well, the outcome over here, 80% of 3,600 is 2,880. Excuse me. Make my font smaller again. There we go. Oops. Why does it do this? Oh, well, okay. Something's going crazy with Word for me, so I'll just make up a new one. Where am I here? So much work when I have to create each one individually. That would be 720 people. I can keep doing this with all of these other branches. This one here, I got to expand out. The ones down below expand out. But this helps me describe all of these. What you're being asked for in your assignment, you don't need all of these extra numbers in here, these counts that I've thrown in. It's going to help you later if you do it. What I'm looking for is you to show me the trees with all the branches, and there are 8 branches in the end, and label them. So there's M 6% and the balance greater than 3,000, 60%, and so on. And if you're using symbols like M or LP or something like that, define what they are. That's all you're asked for in question 1. But then take those and put them into a table. So here's missed payment, balance over 3,000, last payment less than 20%. In my tree above, that's 2,880. Okay. Less than 20% ended up being, here was the 720, I think, that I had up here. That's missed more than 3,000, less than 20%. So missed more, oh, nope. This one should be, no, sorry, wrong place. That should have been 720. You're going to have to pay attention to make sure you get them in the right boxes and that sort of thing. And you may want to summarize your various frequencies. Let me just put in a couple others in here because this will come up with a question. Add them up over here. Down here, if I add up all my numbers, I should get 6,000 because we've got 6,000 missed payments. It should be 94,000. So if you've done your math right, everything should add up. And this generally ends up being a nice summary. It's not what's asked for. It asks for the final probabilities. So you're going to have to do some extra work. Okay. Make these probabilities. These are frequency counts. Again, it's out of 1,000 cases. I suggested here, look at out of 100,000. The 1,000 was a poor choice of words up here, just saying that's where I calculated my probabilities from. You don't need to do this. I'm only using 1,000 or 100,000 or a million or whatever number you want, just to help make the problem more concrete for me, because the probabilities are too abstract. So if you do it this way, it's easier to imagine. If you only use 1,000, you're going to end up with some decimals in here. And I pick a number so big that I don't get decimals if I can. To make this number a decimal, it's divide everything by 100,000. So that's like changing this to 1. To change it to 1, I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is over. I'm going to move my decimal point. So go here. 1, 2, 3. Get rid of this guy. 4. I'm going to have another one. So that's what it is as a decimal. This one will be, I got to have the same number of digits. It's got 2 zeros. This one here has got to be 6%. So that has to be 0.0. So I can make these, if I want to, all into these. If you don't mind, I'm going to not, because I like my frequencies. I'm going to do this. Oops. So yeah, I'll put them in there, but I'll just put them beside. And I keep all of them. Just it helps me realize whether or not I've made a mistake. Sorry, is that? No, it's 423. See? Um, so on. This one over here. And down here in the bottom corner. Yeah, you can put it as percents instead of a decimal. And say I put in the decimal. Um, Sometimes if I've got a lot of percentages and some end up having decimals in them, like this here is 2.88%, but this is 0.72%. And I make mistakes when I've got percentages less than one. I sometimes I slip. So I've developed habits to try to catch the types of mistakes I make. And we all have these sorts of things. So you may find a way that works for you. And if you're good at attention to detail and you don't make these mistakes, then that's great. So if I then was doing this, what's the probability a customer has a balance over 3,000? Well, let me just give you one other number in here. I'm going to answer this for you. This should add up under my scheme this way or as decimals, right? These are like an assignment 4, where I'm just asking you to read things out of a table, a frequency table. You could do it that way, or as from a probability table. It's more complicated than assignment 4 because assignment 4 we had 2 variables, one for columns, one for rows. I've got 2 different columns, but my rows, I've got 2 variables, balance and last payment. And so I've got 3 variables in this problem. And it makes these questions here a little bit more complicated. So what's the chance balance over 3,000? These 2 cases are balance over 3,000. So you're going to get something like 0.177 as your answer, I think, something like that. Or you could take these and get 17,700 and divide it by 100,000. And again, you're going to get 17.7%. Same way. It should be able to work from here and be okay. That if you've got further questions, get after me. The other piece is this table here, which had to do with your decisions. It says we're going to classify customers who owe more than 1,000 and made a small payment last time as being at risk of default. Okay, who are these? Well, over 3,000, less than 20%. It looks like it's just this top row. These ones I'm going to call risky customers, and all the rest I'm not going to call risky customers. And if I want to put them in my table, and if I do it as being applied to 100,000 cases, I've got, what did I say, 4,230 in here. And I had, what did I put? No, sorry, 2,880. And over here, I've got 7,000. Is that the number? 7,110. There we go. And then you could put all the others. We know we have 6,000 missed a payment, 94,000 that did not. We've got 100,000 customers for 100,000 transactions, payments, whatever. That you're concerned about question 5. Among those with a balance exceeding 3,000, what proportion made their last payment on time? So among these ones, so among those 17,700, how many made it on time? These guys did. So these ones out of these ones. Does that make sense, Paige? Okay. So um, fill in this and then work out all these various rates, like were described in chapter 11. Okay. That here's the truth. Did they miss a payment or was it on time? But here's what your decision was, your classification. So you're worried about 13. Um, we missed a whole bunch of people. And that, when you look at this, of the 6,000 that missed payments, you only guessed almost just under half of them. Not very good. And of those that you classified as being high risk, 2/3 of them, almost, or more than half of them anyway, were good customers. So you're not doing very well, you might think. Okay. Um, so an alternative um, would be if you didn't know anything about the customers, so you don't know anything about their previous history, do you think they're going to miss their next payment or pay it on time? What do you think? Who thinks they're going to pay it on time? So this is just a random customer. Know nothing about them. Do you think they're going to be on time or miss their payment? A whole bunch of you typing. Hopefully we'll see something pop up soon. On time, on time. Yeah, because most of them do. So when I'm saying naive, I mean you're simplistic. You don't have a lot of knowledge. So your decision rule is going to be everybody is in good standing. Okay? And I'm going to put 100,000 here, and I'm going to classify 0 of them as being high risk. In 13, I'd like you to know what's the sensitivity rate? What's the false detection rate? If I use this simple one. Okay? That and then in 14, it's an open-ended thing. I'm just trying to think of if you were the credit card customer and you're trying to predict who are these people that might miss a payment, because those are the ones that eventually may end up going bankrupt. And we've got a serious credit problem on our hands with. It may be our first clue. Um, Other things you might want to do in terms of trying to build your decision rule. Okay. Are we okay? Taylor's typing. Last questions about assignment? What's the difference between sensitivity and specificity? Look in your notes. Sensitivity is we're trying to predict missed payments. Okay. What percentage of missed payments are we able to detect? Okay. So it's of what we're searching for. What percentage of them are we able to find? Specificity is sort of the opposite, that of the good standing people, what percentage of them are we able to detect? So sensitivity would be the 2880 out of 6,000. Specificity would be this number, whatever it is, out of 94,000. So it's about 90,000 over 94,000. Okay. Go back and read. It's hard to wrap your head around. Okay. I'm not saying it's easy. Um, Calculation is sort of straightforward once you know it, but getting a good grasp of what it is, uh, these things take. Um, I always have to go back and rethink. What is it? What is it? The names aren't that meaningful to me. Other way around, it depends upon what it is you're trying to predict And generally, I've tried to set these up in your examples in the text and in the notes as being the first column is what we're trying to identify, second column is everything else. And similarly, this is our guess on that. So it had to do with a confusion matrix. What is true? What's a positive and what's a negative? And generally, the confusion matrix is set up in terms of positive, negative, positive, negative. Okay, so that's in terms of what you're trying to detect. So it you may want to put a note in, and if you want to do it reverse, which is fine, say that a positive result is on time. Okay, and that we're trying to predict on time. So if you phrase it that way, but you may have to then define what you mean by a positive. And if you do the rest consistently, that's all fine. Okay. I'll have to make a note in the marking key to the markers because you're not the only one that's raised that issue. Okay. Um, could I go over 13? Again, that's the one I just did. Uh, Rewatch the video. Okay. That I try to explain what this one is, what I mean by a naive classifier. Classifying everybody as being good standing. If that was what would your confusion matrix look like, and from it, the sensitivity and the false detection rate for a decision rule that said everybody is going to be on time. Let me try to zip through what I was going to cover today, and I'm going to do it really quick. That there's a bunch of things to do with trying to, in this deployment stage, of wrapping up our project. And it's making sure you've really solved the problem that was posed, that your target hasn't moved on you. If it was a project that took you a year to do, maybe even a couple months, the problem situation may have changed during that time. So the initial problem, they'd like to go back and change. And so, but sometimes you end up getting off track and you've answered the wrong question. You've given a really nice answer, but it's the wrong question. Okay? Go back and check to make sure you answered the question that was posed. And think about whether or not the different things associated with, are they going to use it? Are they going to believe you? And we're seeing lots of examples of distrust and not using things. This is happening with issues to do with COVID, with the AstraZeneca vaccine, that people don't believe it anymore. They're not believing a lot of the information that's coming out about COVID. They're getting, most of the time, it's conveying information from you to your client. We're seeing a lot of problems at the moment about trust. Today it was on the news about, in Nova Scotia, the Biodiversity Act, and the fact that the province has gone and changed it. They listened to people and then now they've changed everything. And nobody's happy now. That they don't believe them. And trust is a key thing that you need here. With COVID, one of the problems has been we've got so many different metrics out there. And this we hear most about AstraZeneca. What does that mean? Some are saying it's 100% effective in preventing hospitalization and death. And then others are saying, no, it's only 60% effective or 69% effective, something in preventing COVID. What's the difference between those? We've just gone through with classification. There's so many different metrics. Um, and do we understand them? No, we don't. It isn't a problem with the metrics. It's a problem is that problems are more complex. They're not simplistic. They can be seen from multiple points of view. What's important to one person is may be different from a different person. And so they will use different metrics. So it's tricky. There are a lot of risks and pitfalls in implementation. And so there are a lot of people have done sometimes really, really good work, and then it falls down. Again, if you're in Nova Scotia, I think most people thought that Leahy report was a really good report on our forestry sector. So the analysis was great, but they've not been able to implement it. Um, there have been, just because of a lot of debates, disagreements, um, the devil's in the details, sort of thing. So, how do you get through to that? And that's really important. So, normally you'll need multiple reports, not one. So, if you just did in the other class, we had several students doing marketing. They've had to do case study reports, and they've run into all kinds of problems in getting their report done. And we'll talk about that in storytelling. But you've got to think about it. There's going to be a summary report of your analysis. Some people may read that. Managers often don't. They just read an executive summary, a list of recommendations. And um, that's critical in getting that being really persuasive and getting them to buy into it. The implementation plan, how do you carry it out? How do you've said what it is you want to do, sort of the strategy, your recommendations, but the devil is often in the details. And very frequently, as we get into it and executing the recommendations, we realize how complex it is, how to get buy-in. Their managers don't do implementation. It's the frontline workers that do that. And there are issues there. A lot of our projects in data mining, like a marketing one where you're trying to improve sales to customers, or these risk, fraud, bankruptcy types of things, those are ongoing. We're going to get new data all the time. We're going to be taking actions, but our environment changes. So we may have to change some of our decision rules, change our models, our approaches. How do we do the maintenance on that? And it isn't unusual to see someone come up with a great project, they launch it, beautiful. Okay, the outside consultant did all of that work for you, and it was really expensive. Now you have to update it. Who's going to do that? Not me. I'm not going to do it. Someone else can do that. That's not my job. And I can think of uh, examples of ones where I can think of one organization spent a huge amount of money, a whole year's worth of work, implemented it, and then realized it's going to have to be updated annually. And they have no people or resources to do that and do it well. So it died. That initial investment, all lost. It's not unusual. And lessons learned is a report for you about the process, because you're probably going to have to do another one of these again. If you just had to do a group project this term, do a lessons learned report on that group project. What can you learn to help you do group projects better the next time? Um, they're always awful. So implementation, a whole bunch of things there. I'm not going to get into it. I want to zip through. Lessons learned is for you on that. Your summary is, again, it's storytelling. We're going to get into that. You're not going to talk about the process because the client doesn't care too much other than a short summary of how you did this work. They don't care about the details. They just want to see the results. What did you discover? Okay. You need to understand the process. That's part of your lessons learned report. So you got to split these. Who's your audience? Client care? No, don't put it in. You care? Put it in your lessons learned. Okay. Separate it. So we're telling a story. And so if you have to do a case study, and you're going to do a lot of those in management and marketing, uh, it's going to be an analysis of a company's business problem. There'll be an introduction, a beginning to it. There'll be all your analysis in the middle, and then you're going to have your conclusions and recommendations at the end. That don't split that up. If you got a group with 3 people, and Patrick says he's going to do the introduction, and Abigail are going to do a lot of the analysis in the middle and that sort of thing, and Chris, he's going to write the final report, recommendations, you're going to get an awful report. Why? Because they aren't going to link together. You're going to need a flow that goes through. It's going to read like 3 people wrote it. You want it to be written like a team wrote it. So it may be a fourth person goes and synthesizes all the things so that they flow through. Otherwise, you'll end up with recommendations that the analysis doesn't support or even, don't even appear in the analysis, and sometimes don't even seem to relate to the initial business problem, or the description of the business problem and the analysis don't seem to link. Remember, there's a flow here. Got to connect those. That those arrows are important in that diagram. That so when I want the conclusions to be believable, because you want them to be acted upon. So we need that logical flow coming through the whole report to fit the conclusions. And a lot of the stuff in the middle is boring. So include stuff, only the stuff you really need to. So if it really is boring and is not important to the client, leave it out, put it in an appendix. If it's essential, but it's still boring, you're going to have to find ways to keep their attention. Think about that. Think about how you read. Okay. The conclusions are really important. Don't, it's not a mystery novel. I just read, I like reading murder mysteries, but it's awful when it's in the last 10 pages. It's just, it's a big surprise. Who done it type of thing. Those are fun maybe in books. Sometimes you can feel cheated in reading them, but you want the reader to see the end before you reach it. They've seen that light at the end of the tunnel. They understand where you're going. Um, that you're just pulling things together to make your point at the end. You're not giving surprises. If you got a surprise in there, you're not, your client's going to be upset with you because they don't understand why. Um, that and it may be that you're going to identify certain things. Yes, you should do this. Other things you're going to tell them to do is we need better data. That it may be I have to go back and redo the project again at a future date. That we now understand the problem better, and you're giving them better feedback on having uh, defining better metrics for them for success. That and what data they should collect in future so that they can make better decisions in future. Because again, it's probably a repetitive situation. So you may give them information to do future things better. Okay. Um, in a lot of instances, you don't know the business well enough. Be careful about stepping on toes. You, as a consultant, may have done work for other businesses that are similar, and you can talk about that. But each one is unique. Nobody likes to be told what to do or be told that they understand them better than they know themselves. Maybe told things to think about themselves. That uh, Canada has a long history of telling Indigenous people what they need and doing things for them or to them. Wrong approach. They don't understand Indigenous people the way Indigenous people will understand themselves. And there's a lot of diversity. And there is not one. Um, we talk of them as native peoples and different nations. Each of those nations is unique. They're not all the same. And it's inappropriate to label them as being all the same and let them speak for themselves. So, what you should be doing is telling the client things to think about or consider. But the action is don't tell them what to do necessarily. Be careful. So, writing it, that I have to go really fast. The person reading it is going to scan it. They don't read, and you don't read. Nobody does. Nobody reads anymore. I don't know if they ever did. Did you read your economics textbook? Bet you didn't. Bet you scanned it. You read the headings. You saw little bits that jumped out at you. And then you may have gone back and read, but if you saw big text heavy sections, you probably skipped over it and hoped you never had to go back and read them. And that is the way people read reports. So read it the same way. That that think of what draws your eye. Headings draw your eye, boldface, underlining, text boxes, color, things in the right hand margin. Right-hand side is important. Your eye gets drawn more to the right than to the left. Think in books where they've got notes that go down the right margin. They don't put them as frequently in the left margin. On a website, ads on the right-hand side down the right draw the eye more than ones on the left. Okay? There's a lot of experimentation done in terms of how the eye works. I'm not an expert. I know a little bit about it. And I know a little bit about the way I read. Think, do it the way you read. You know yourself. Graphs, tables, often are good at catching the eye. So instead of putting your facts and figures in the body of the text, like in your assignment that you just had, a lot of numbers, right? Maybe put them in a table because they won't read them and make sense of them in a paragraph. So use a table or a better still, a chart to be able to do it. Okay. So tell stories. And that's what you're doing is telling a story. If you want to give it examples of storytelling, if you still might have picture books from when you were 6 years old, go dig them out, or 4 years old, or whatever, when you were learning to read. That, and you'll see that a good picture book, the pictures and the text complement each other, and they're really engaging. Learn from that. I learned, I studied German for a couple of years, forgotten most of it. Spent a year or a summer working in Germany. And my German improved significantly because I started reading comic books in German. And it was that combination of pictures and text help reinforce things. They're really good. That, but you need to design them well. They don't just happen. And I've tried to draw your attention to this back when we did pivot charts. That and Tuki's line that a greatest value of a picture when it forces us to notice what we didn't expect to see, okay? Or it tells us a story. There are a lot of standard ones you'll get in Excel and other software, and there are some textbooks that will tell you about how to do all of these ones and give you examples of them, but it doesn't tell you how to use them properly. It just says, here they are. Bad advice. And there are a lot of them. I'll zip you through a bunch. Line charts. Time series data, always use a line chart. Shows how things change over time, but there are different variations. You can't have too many lines. Once you get more than about 5 at the same time, it gets confusing to read. And what's the story you're trying to tell? So this is real data over a 15-year period that the changing demographics of business students. Now that's all I wanted to say was that it changed. Here's Nova Scotia students. Now here, bad choice of color. This was Excel picked the colors. I should have gone in and tried to change some of them because these two blues are too much alike. That this is Nova Scotia here, the top one going down. So business students studying at universities in Nova Scotia has been trending down for 15 years. Why? Demographics. The number of um, uh, students graduating from high school each year has been going down. And if we go back, that in time, we find the birth rate was declining. Birth rate declined for about 20 years. And we're seeing the impact of this. And it started showing up around 2000 or thereabouts. And it's now starting to flatten out. So this curve, if I drew it in the future, would be flatter. But this is not because business became less popular, but because of declining birth rates 20 years before. International was interesting. It went shooting up and then it dropped down again. A large chunk of this was students from Saudi Arabia that we offended the Saudi government 5 or 6 years ago, and they stopped sending students to Canada, and that's why it changed. Yeah, it was about six years ago, and that's part of it. COVID, this only goes to 2018-19, so it's a couple of years out of date. And COVID would push that down further. And there's some crazy things happening at CBU that have made things go up and down as well, that are beyond the end of this chart. Ontario has been steadily going up. This is primarily the efforts of Dalhousie doing that. That yellow is Atlantic Canada. It's been going down. That's because of birth rate problems as well. But each one has a story, and you could go and explain them. But it's just showing change over time. But is that the story you want to tell? Maybe you want to talk about just total enrollments. And the previous one didn't tell me that. Total enrollments went up for a decade and then went down. I changed my title. Business enrollments decline after a decade of steady growth. So put a title that tells the story. And now I've stacked them that the legend is upside down. Excel did this to me. Nova Scotia's on the bottom and International's on the top. A stacked one can be tricky to read. So its main story is the total, but you're trying to show what makes up the total. So it does great on the total. On the individual parts, it's tricky. Like the Atlantic Canada, I can't see that it's really declining. That BC and prairies, it's actually increasing a little bit. Ontario has been steadily increasing, but it's harder to see. It's tricky to see this in the middle. If the main part of my story, though, and for Atlantic universities or Nova Scotia universities, it's students from Nova Scotia are the most important market. So they're in the bottom. And this you can read like a line graph because the base is flat. These other ones are tricky to read because the base of the line and the top move. The international is a little bit trickier to read than the previous chart. Previous one, international, you see, was quite sharp up and then down. I don't quite see it the same way here because my base is wiggly, so it's trickier to read. What are you trying to tell? Are you trying to talk about the individual markets? Or are you trying to talk about the total or both? One, you may need to use two charts. You may need to use one and focus on what you can get out of that one. Okay? Pie charts. People love pie charts. I hate them. Okay, I'll try to explain why. It shows generally percentages. So of a large of 100%, how does it split up? How do you split the pie? Okay, that's where the name pie comes from. But it's hard to compare the slices in a pie. It's area, and area is hard for us to process more than length or height because it's two-dimensional. It's tricky for people to compare areas. That some people go and make it into a big box with little quadrants. It's even worse. It's really hard to compare areas. And so with slices of the pie, it's tricky to compare. It's better than this. You may have seen them as little boxes in a square thing, square frame. Those are really, really awful to interpret. If you want to make it worse, make it three-dimensional. To make it three-dimensional, you've got to tip that circle backwards. So if I tip it back, it changes perspective. It stretches. Well, it sort of leaves the left to right the same, but top to bottom gets shrunk. So I've compressed it here relative to that. It makes it harder to interpret them. And this extra thickness makes, even if you could interpret the top piece of B compared to D, you're being thrown by the extra ribbon down below. And C ends up getting bigger because it's got the extra coloring down below. Really, really screws things up. If you make it into tubes, some people do, even worse. Never, ever add 3 dimensions to a chart that is two-dimensional. We call it chart junk. If you were to compare 4 groups, so this is market. So I've got 4 different markets, 4 countries I'm selling my product in, and 4 products. And I'm looking at how much each of them makes up of my market. How do you, what are you trying to show here? Oops, this little wire. What are you trying to say? It's a nice picture, but you should be starting out figuring out what your objective is of the chart and then build the appropriate chart to show what it is, what your story is. So if I put a heading over here, what's the heading going to show? Okay, that it isn't clear with the pie chart. It's I can say that the four markets are different in terms of which products they like. They like all four products, but in differing amounts. Okay, is that it? Is that the whole story? Do I need a picture to do that? Columns sometimes work better. And so I'll show you a variety. You've seen column charts when we did, and these are clustered columns. We did that with pivot tables. So this one, I'm just showing total sales, not percentages. I'll get to the percentages. That, and by them, I can look at the relative, oh, product C is not very popular in the Netherlands, that relative to these other ones. So I'm looking at relative height. This scale, the numbers are so small you can't even see them. You're probably looking at this as relative heights, like you're looking at percentages, right? So you're already doing scaling. But the markets are different. Norway, sales of all products are much more so than back here in the Netherlands. I've already done it and sequenced these. Usually try to point out things as you go. So Norway is my biggest market, Netherlands my smallest market. I've sequenced them in that fashion. I may also want to sequence them in terms of importance of products. So the one I put on the left is product C. Okay, it's my slowest selling product. The one I've got on the right is product B. It's my biggest selling product. So maybe I'm going to organize them that way so that the sequence has some meaning. It's the biggest seller to smallest seller. But that varies by which market I'm in. That um, that B may be my most popular product overall, but it is not the most popular one in Austria and Belgium. Okay? You may want to look at them as stacked ones because you're interested in what the grand total is. So this is like the previous one is sort of like a line chart of showing the individuals, but it doesn't show you total sales. So here it is as a stacked column chart. And so it shows that Norway is my biggest and Netherlands is, about half the size. There, I've not paid attention in this one to should I do it A, B, C, D, or how should I sequence the products here? Maybe I should put my most popular product at the bottom, least popular at the top, or something like that. That maybe B should be at the bottom here. If I want to do it more like a pie chart and show percentage, because it's hard to compare this orange to that orange to that orange to that one, okay, because the length of the columns is different. And so maybe I do it this way. It's got similar problems to what a pie chart is, okay? Comparing these slices is tricky. And um, again, maybe sequencing might help. I'm not sure that this is better than that one with the four pie charts. Or I could do percentage, but as a stack column chart. Is this any better? It's complicated. I'm trying to show three things at once. Percentage of total sales, where it's being sold, and what's being sold. So anytime you get into three variables, you're into challenging charts. And you may want to experiment with a variety of different ones. And you may end up with different types of charts in different contexts. Sometimes you may want to portray it as a bar chart. So here's a case where I have a lot of products. I'm looking at them over the last 4 years, and I'd like to look at, how much the sales are of the different products. The descriptors for the four of the different products are quite long, and putting them down here below makes it hard to read. But if I did it as a bar chart, it makes it easier. So there I can look across instead. Most of the time we do like columns, it seems, more than bars. But bars are great where the descriptors are long. Put them in a sequence. I make them go smallest to largest because I want to draw their attention to the right, and that's where their eye typically goes. We also focus on top to bottom. So the most important thing I put at the top, my biggest selling product, and my slow sellers I put at the bottom because people don't look at them. So again, think about how you process information in drawing your chart. We've done the stuff to do with histograms. I'm going to skip it. Scatter diagrams, think about it. This is one a student gave me. He was comparing high school average to first year grade point average, sample of data from a survey. Um, he put the title of the chart as being the name of the question on the survey. Excel did this for him, and he didn't clean it up. He's got a bunch of outliers, students that had a 0 average in high school, not too likely. A student that had a grade point average of 15, no, probably a 1.5. So I've got some outliers need to be cleaned up. My axes are not labeled. What's this? This is grade point average. This is high school average. Should the axes be reversed? I'm trying to predict grade point average based upon high school average. High school came before university. Clean it up and give it a better title. So here's it cleaned up. Outliers are gone. My high school average, I'm going from 60 to 100. Before it went 0 to 120. That was silly. Okay. GPA on the vertical, put labels here. It's pretty broad scatter. I put a line through to show that they do seem to be related, sort of. But it's a really weak predictor. So that was my title. The story I'm telling is that your high school grades are not really strong predictors of university success. So it's a story you're telling. The picture and the title should go together. They should be telling you something. Why is it there? Why do you include this? What's the purpose? What's the objective? So I'm going to put it together. I'm out of time, but I want to zip through this if you've got the patience to. Every day, the Department of Finance of Nova Scotia puts out its daily stats. It takes data generally from Statistics Canada and repackages it and puts a summary together for Nova Scotia. And they do a very, very good job of doing it. They do it mostly through charts, and sometimes the reports are very long. This one was fairly long. It came out in early January, talking about um, a recent release on population estimates. It's not a census, but it was based upon their estimates of the population and how it changed. So it was just looking specifically at Nova Scotia. First one was showing, well, what counties gained people and who lost. Halifax increased population by about 2% last year. Well, a year ago. Antigonish also had some gains that overall the province had some gains, but a lot of provinces had losses. Okay. That's in percentage terms, but in actual terms, if I want to look at how many people, then I get a scale problem because Halifax is so big. It's half the population of the province is in Halifax. So showing the raw data, I've got an outlier. So it shows a picture with the outlier in, sort of like a box and whisker with the outlier and without the outlier. Take Halifax out, and then we can see the gains and losses in more accuracy. Okay? That why did the population change? So here they tried to tell the story in 4 pictures. They tried to do it in a different fashion a year before, and it got too confusing. This year, it did it, for the most part, in 4 pictures. First off, is population changes because of births and deaths. Halifax grew because of births. Everywhere else had more deaths than births. Okay? And we'll see later it's because Halifax has a fairly young population. The rest of the province has a fairly old population. That we also have immigration taking place, and that's our biggest factor now in population change. So we had a lot of immigrants to Nova Scotia. Almost all of them came to Halifax. So again, we've got an outlier. So without the outlier, this is what it looks like. And you see that it came to various counties in varying amounts. That in one case, it looks like there was a net outmigration, people leaving the country. And then there are people that come from other provinces. And it used to be, we overall in Nova Scotia had a net outmigration. People headed to Ontario and Alberta to find jobs. Now, the job market in Alberta is worsened significantly. And a lot of those people have moved back home. And where are they moving to? It turns out in every county, people moved in. More people moved in than moved out, especially in Halifax County. Again, it's an outlier, take it out, and we've seen gains everywhere, which is really good. People moving back. That, but then within the province, we also have movements. So they're moving from Cape Breton to Halifax, or they're moving from Digby to Halifax. Yeah, Halifax is the winner, lots of losers. And if you look at it, here's Cape Breton, I think. Big loss out of Cape Breton, big gain into Halifax. And some others are losing, lots of them are. Um, so that's the story of the population change. They had some text, but it's brief, and it's only to help highlight this. So was this just a 1 year phenomenon? Well, they looked at it over a period of a decade, and yeah, it's about maybe longer than that. I can't quite see, it's too small. They did it by giving us a total of 15, is that 18? We have 18 counties, 18 line graphs. Put them all at you at once in one picture. And they're simple enough that you can do that. You don't need to see the numbers, that you just need to see the lines, different colors to make it easier to read. And you'll see almost everywhere things are going down. Halifax is going up. Kings and Hants County are close by to Halifax. They're going up. Colchester is reasonably close. It's sort of doing okay. But others, no. They're having trouble, and this is a long-term problem. They put in one pie chart. What's the pie chart for? Hmm. It it maybe is to reflect the variable or uh, visual change. Okay, that they all look the same before, same types of charts. Uh, I think its main purpose was to just hammer home how big Halifax is in terms of the whole province. But it also tells you you may not have realized how big Cape Breton is as a county in the whole province. You know, we think of Cape Breton as an island, but it's composed of several counties. But Cape Breton County, in and of itself, is quite big. Okay. Um, Also, Kings and Hants, which are next door, and Colchester, which is close by. These are commuting distance to Halifax, dominance of the urban area. They also, they showed trends in the past. This is an interesting type of chart. And if you're doing demographics and looking at where to locate a new business, look for the future, because are you going to, is your market still going to be there in the future? This is um, uh, these, I call them butterfly charts. I can't remember what the proper name is for them. It generally shows males versus females and how many people or what percentage of the population is at each different age level. So this is newborns at the bottom. These are 90-year-olds or more at the top. And you can see that ages 0 up to about 18, it has not changed much over time. So an 18-year-old was born 18 years ago. So they were zeros 18 years ago in such a chart. Then we've got big growth spurt here. This is Halifax. And then it sort of drops down. And then here's baby boomers out here. And then they're dying off. You can see we've got a very large number of people, quite old, and a very small group that's coming up that are younger than you are, that are going to replace them in the future. So we got a serious population problem because this group in 20 years are going to be up here, and in 40 years are going to be up here. So on through. Our workforce, future workforce, is going to be we got a serious problem in our workforce in the future. Now, this is Halifax in the heavy line. In the faint line that's underneath it, it's Nova Scotia as a whole. So Halifax has similar proportion that are infants or children, but it has a lot more people that are in the 20 to 40 age group than the province as a whole. A lot of that's immigration, in migration, that's causing that. And it's got somewhat less among the older folks. So if I got more here, I've got to take them from somewhere. Males, the pattern is similar. Look at Guysborough County. Guysborough County has similar problems of not having many children, has fewer children than the province as a whole. Look at this, ages 20 to 40. It wasn't due to births. These are people that are in the prime working age group. They've left home, probably left home a long time ago to go for work, and they have not come back. So they've got a serious shortage in their workforce right now. Or it may be they don't have a shortage and they won't in the future because the jobs aren't there. Then you're looking at the ones that are over 50. Here's 65. They've got a massive, massive population that is elderly. They got a serious problem here, probably in healthcare delivery, that type of thing. If you are a business opening up, think about it. This is going to move through. Okay. So unless you're in the funeral home business, it's probably not a great market. We don't have a lot of young people and the like, and we will not have more young people. It's going to be, Guysborough County is going to continue to die. It's retailers are going to run away because there just won't be customers. So it tells a story. This one here tells it in a different way in terms of average age over time. And you can see that Halifax is getting older over time, but it's still young relative to other parts of the province. Guysborough, it's getting much, much older, and it already was very old. That So it's got a long-term problem. And the last one here is ones that have to do with movement from cities to rural areas, or the other way around. Urban areas population across the country is growing, but outside of the urban core, population growth is lower or negative. So it's happening. Here's another one with a story where they didn't use a good heading. It was a report on university professors and how when I was a student, there were very, very few female faculty members. I had two females faculty professors in my whole undergraduate experience and two more in my graduate school. All the rest were male. And over time, getting closer to today, that the proportion of females has increased, and of course, the proportion of males has decreased. You don't need the gray line for males if you've got the one for females, because if females are going up, then males must be going down. Total is 100%. Why did they show both? It's redundant. Why be redundant? Well, they should have had a title saying the gap between males and females is decreasing, because that's what it shows as a picture, and it's a very strong statement, but they wasted it with this title that you've got up at the top here. Okay, that it's from when I was a student or started university to closer to today, it's changed a lot, is what they're trying to say. And the graph says that, but the title doesn't. And then here are a bunch of others that, again, tell stories, and my friends, and Kingsburg again. Word and end um, that do I actually say goodbye? Okay. So if you're going to tell a story, make it a good story, make it simple, clear, honest, transparent. Um, don't put things in you don't need to. That and that's it. Course is over. So I've tried to tell you how to put a story together. Um, hopefully, this is the end of that story. Enjoy your summer. When it's safe at some time in the future, I'd appreciate it if you came by and visited me. I'd like to see who you were. Um, and as Bonnie Henry in BC says, be calm, be kind, be safe, and you guys take care. Um, and again, if you haven't filled out that survey and given me some feedback, I really would appreciate it. Uh, that it's been good. I'd like to meet some of you someday. Bye now.